be looking at that. But what I'm going to look at is something that is extremely important, I think, and very significant for us. You may know this, that Algeria is the largest country geographically in Africa. It is actually the largest country geographically, and it's been noted for a rich concentration of rock art, particularly in Tassili, Niger, inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1986. More than 15,000 paintings and engravings, some of which date back to 12,000 years, provide us a unique insight into the environmental, social life, and even economic life of that particular area. So we're going to be looking at that. But I want to start you off with something, because here's one of the things that you may not know. The Sahara Desert is the largest desert in the world. There's no desert anywhere in the world larger than the Sahara. And Africa has two big deserts. It has the Sahara and it has the Kalahari. These are two big deserts, but the largest is the Sahara. But the Sahara has not always been desert. Listen to this carefully. The Sahara has not always been desert. In fact, as early as the 1980s, the Americans sent planes over the Sahara, satellites over the Sahara, taking pictures of the Sahara, and they showed under the sand formations of cities and towns under the sand in the Sahara. But we know one thing. We know that the Sahara has been expanding. So the expansion of the Sahara drove people from the middle of the Sahara to the northern parts of the continent, as well as to the south of the Sahara. So you have people who went into the forest region in the south, and people went into the coastal region of the north. And this is long before we have any other people coming into the continent but black people. These are all black people we're talking about here now, all Africans at this time, because we're talking about 12, 10, maybe as late as 8,000 years ago. The desert was expanding and people were moving from different areas in the desert and so on. So now we still have oases in the desert. But one of the things that the people left, and I love the fact that Africans did this, you always have to leave a marker that you've been there, that this is where you are, this is what you have done, this is your place. The Africans who lived in the desert 12,000 years ago also left paintings. And these paintings appear in what they call Tassili area of the Sahara. And the Tassili area of the Sahara is one of the richest artistic areas on the face of the earth in terms of the volume of artistic paintings that are there in that region. And when it was discovered, people said, wow, look what these people did. What did they do? These early people who occupied these fertile regions at the time of Africa painted about their lives and about the informality of their lives. They even painted chariots. People sometimes say, well, but a chariot that was introduced into Africa. Wait a minute. They had paintings of chariots on the walls of caves. Long before chariots appeared anywhere else, they appeared in Africa in the paintings of these people, you see. But in terms of casual living, you see these examples of these paintings. These are old paintings. Tassili, but not only Tassili, there are other areas. And I may be able to show you through just checking on some things to show you that there are other areas where you have these great paintings. But I call this exploration and expansion. And the reason I call it exploration is because sometimes people use what I call pejoratives, negative terms about African people. And they said, well, Africans were hunters and gatherers. And I said, wait a minute. No. You got that wrong. They were explorers. There were people who were exploring, and they were not only explorers, but they were, you would call them scientists today. Actually, the people who went out so-called hunting, went out looking, they were the first explorers. They were the people who had to see what was going on in another place. They had to go across mountains, across streams and rivers, and they were able to come back and tell their people, this is what's going on. This is what I saw. This is what this can be used for, and so forth and so on. That's the beginning. So when people give you these negative terms about Africa, you have to always question it. Not only do we talk about chronology, we have to always talk about words, lexical items, how people use language. Because when people use language in a negative way, what they are actually doing is trying to degrade the people that they're talking about. So remember that always. So African people very early on painted informal scenes of themselves. And that those scenes have been preserved by the dryness of the desert. That's what preserved them. If they had done this in the forest region, then the humidity would have destroyed it. But because they did it in the desert and it became more and more drier and drier, it preserved, and we saw these preservations. And now this is very interesting here. This is another picture. This comes from the same Tassili region. And this is perhaps the first example of where we began to get the glyphs that we make what we call chikam or merunecha. The first example of glyphs. Look under the belly of the animal there, and you can see what looks like a symbol, that circle symbol with a dot in it, looks like Ra. That's what it looks like to me, because I studied merunecha. I studied chikam. That looks like a symbol of Ra. And in fact, this may be the prototypical discussion or beginning of the writing that would appear thousands of years later in around 3,400 years BC in the Nile Valley. But it was already in the desert, you see? Already in the desert, people began to explore these notions of how do you record things. That's what writing is for in the beginning. It's to record. It's to not only record, but to give human beings an understanding of what it is that they are seeing. And sometimes we don't know what we're seeing. But if they record it, if they just put a little marker, then that marker itself tells us something about that particular item. And look at this one. Here's again. I call it Tassili Shenu. This is a warrior, you see? This is somebody with a bow and arrow, a man who is shooting a bow and arrow. They drew this on the walls, on the caves of the desert. And the desert is a mighty changing place. I've never driven through it, or I wanted to.